Okay, welcome everyone back to Talking Data with Joel and Mike, where we explore the cross sections of data and everything to do with fundraising and really marketing and customers, because they're all, in our view, one and the same. So today we've got an exciting guest to introduce, Braden Spencer from Baker Institute, where we're actually going to do more of a case study type podcast today, where we're going to explore his experiences in some acquisition work that we've done with Baker over the last 12 months. So we're really going from strategy to signups. It's going to be the Baker Institute acquisition playbook that we'll explore today. So yeah, as mentioned, to introduce Braden, welcome.
Thanks, Joel. Good to be here.
Yeah, Braden is now, and he's headed up various fundraising teams in Australia and also overseas in Canada, and has quite an extensive experience across all types of fundraising, but also particularly acquisition channels as well. So I think Braden will have a wealth of experience to share today. And as usual, we've got my co-host Mike joining us today. Once again, many of you may already know Michael well. A deep experience across data over the last really 20 plus years. Mike, will I say that? That won't go any deeper.
Yeah, it's probably more than that, but yeah, that'll be enough.
Yeah, let's keep with 20 plus years. Yeah, and really, the way data supports all of our work is more relevant than ever. Hence why our podcast is forever evolving and fruitful session to share with everyone. So let's jump in from the start. So Braden, let's set the scene. So diving into acquisition, what problem were you trying to solve, and where did the ideas take shape? If you cast your mind back, like maybe even 18 months ago or so, when you were looking at where could Baker Institute go?
Yeah, we were really looking at, we were probably naively trying to solve an industry-wide problem in our own little microcosm, but everyone knows that acquisition, whether that be single gift or regular gift, costs are high and increasing, and it's getting more difficult to find sustainable sources of leads and or new donors. That was no different at the Baker. We were coming out of a historical era of a declining database. It's getting smaller and smaller every year, and also our database was getting older and older in demographic. So we needed to change. And then layered on top of that, you've got changes in privacy laws, which are going to impact things like the co-op and list swaps and those type of things. And also changes in technology meant that we needed to act now, or we were going to continue to shrink. So yeah, that was the small but large problem that we were trying to solve.
Yeah, and we'll dive into some of those specifics and learnings in a little bit. But Mike, I mean, just for a bit of background it'd be good to hear some of your insights into acquisition. I know you've had a fair bit of experiences, particularly with the telemarketing channel in recent times, of some of the challenges there. But in general, obviously, data you've experienced every shape or form.
Yeah, it's very true. The one of the things that we're seeing across multiple industries is obviously the mobile devices increasingly blocking and flagging solicitations and unidentified calls, right? Apple's rolled out, a new operating system that not everybody may have installed, but OS 26 is sort of sitting there in the background on a lot of phones, which gives even greater capability to the recipient of a call to block and filter out and do all sorts of different things. I've experienced it myself recently, where I was actually waiting for a call, and the call just automatically was going to voicemail, even though I didn't want that to happen, because the phone was seeing it was unsolicited call. And there's a particular algorithm there and a formula that sort of is now in play. A lot of people probably aren't even consciously aware of this on their Android and their Apple devices, and so I think this is obviously going to have a huge impact across the not-for-profit industry and other industries. And so the whole concept of multi-channel marketing, I think, is going to have to really dial up for not-for-profits and commercials to successfully communicate, right? So that they can't assume that a telemarketing campaign in its own right will actually successfully make contact with their end recipient, and so they're going to have to use a combination of traditional and various means to engage, right? And I think it's only going to get tougher from a technology perspective, as we've sort of alluded to. And then with the government rolling out age verification requirements at the end of the year, that's also going to have a huge impact on commercial entities and some of the channels that the not-for-profits and the commercials are working in. So for example, the not-for-profits and they spend money in the social media environment. Well, the social media platforms are going to have a lot more rigor around the age of the people on those platforms, and they may not be able to verify legitimate people on those platforms, and they're going to be faced with the dilemma of do I continue to provide a service or not to some people. So it's going to be an interesting 2026 in Australia in terms of both technology and legislation. So
which
the interesting part of that is you've got the conundrum of like that being timed, like the introduction of that technology being timed with the reduction of or the removal of checks from the banking system as well, which means we're trying to push people towards technology because of the reduction of checks, but then the technology is actually restricting how we can actually use it. So it's an interesting quandary that we're in.
It's a perfect storm, isn't it? Right? It's like the worst of timings, right? I really feel for the not-for-profit industry around the whole check dilemma. Obviously, New Zealand executed on that a few years back, and a number of charities over in New Zealand saw a huge drop-off of donations as a result of that. I was talking to one charity. They were saying something like 40% or more of their donations were coming in via check, and so it's a real, to me, it's having come from the banking industry, I know that check processing and can be a costly exercise for the institutions, but it's, in my mind, it's also an essential service. So I'm not a big favour of the financial institutions cutting checks out, because I think it's one of those has a huge impact on the community at this present stage.
I think it really just all points to, in these sort of times of change, it's really organizations that are most adaptive and willing to test and improve, like more agile in a sense, that are going to work their way through all of this, because I think there's no silver bullets here, and or clear answers, and hence probably a little bit of a segue into what we've started to do with Baker over the last 12 months is really take on moving away from like the traditional like pure play DM type acquisition program, and really go out into a really multi-channel approach. In fact, I think we ended up using about 5 or 6 different touch points and channels across the program, and really had some, and we'll share some interesting outcomes shortly. But Braden, was there, I guess, just before we get into any early surprises, like based on, you said 18 months ago, you sort of set the ground or foundations for some real sort of yeah, I guess not innovative or more real sort of adapting to the time acquisitions. Was there any surprises that took you out?
Yeah, there was actually, and it was sort of diving back into something that have worked in our past at Baker, that had been put on hold 4 or 5 years ago, and then bringing that back and putting a modern spin on it. And that was single gift acquisition via telemarketing, which with the introduction of like digital acquisition and those type of things, I thought, oh, that's so old school that it's probably not going to work. But after testing it a little bit last year and then realizing that the donors that we are in the market for, which are, I guess, the more older demographic, maybe 50 plus, who've been directly or indirectly impacted by heart disease and diabetes, they're actually looking for that human connection and personal connection. So it's not just about getting a letter in the mail or getting an email or seeing a digital display. They're all important for like credibility and supporting, but they actually want to speak to somebody or connect with somebody on a human touch point. So it was quite interesting to see how successful and how many new donors we actually brought in via that method. And then subsequent to that, I mean, and Marketsoft were great in actually washing that data and making sure that the data that we sent to the telemarketing team was the best data that we could possibly send through. But it was also the second gift rate and how quickly these people were giving their second gift and that type of thing, which were surprising and impressive.
Which is a bit different from pure DM once again, because of, I guess, the old terminology of snail mail. It's probably snail response as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes. So I guess touching into then the actual some of the actual campaign detail. We won't spend too much time on this, but in terms of actually how do we turn that sort of initial analysis and insights into the targeting strategy, and what sort of went into that. I know, Braden, you being the GM of fundraising, probably not as close to some of this level of detail, or maybe some of your inner data science pops out there, but essentially we from the test and improve process, we did test quite a range of audiences. So we obviously, one of the stronger audiences that came out was the reactivation or the lapse space, and the benefit that the Baker had was that with its long history, there was actually quite a large bucket of deeply lapsed data that could really be mined. And so what we found that with that group, along with quite a lot of data hygiene applied, we were able to pick out quite a significant base to actually convert both, as Braden said, across TM and DM. But we also, to drill into the testing pieces, we also used the other channels. We pushed it into Facebook custom audiences, which the digital team then went off and did a whole range of activity. Then we did some small tests with SMS touch points as well, and that often comes back as like not as a standalone channel, because if you try and acquire straight up SMS messages, that would really come across quite spammy. But when you're using it as more of an introduction to other channels, then we found actually a very, very low, say opt-out rate from that. And then probably the other innovation you guys tested was just that multi-touch point, like using like low cost postcards and those pieces into the campaign. So that and overall, once we in this last year of activity, the short number, and Braden, you can confirm some of this, is that if we just did DM only, we worked out we would have got about half the response. Basically, the response doubled because we were tapping into a range of channels and touch points over roughly about a 3-month period. And really from a ROI perspective, it really became a viable outcome. So that's so I guess that's kind of some of the data pieces or the analysis pieces. Where do you see the creative that came into the whole program? Because Braden, you'd be probably closer to on the creative side. How did that fit into this acquisition thinking?
Just to your point around the full 3-month process and the surprise element, and the one thing that it was an evolving campaign as well. We didn't start out at the start going, we're going to have 6 touch points. It was, we're going to have a multi-channel approach, and we sort of evolved sometime through opportunity, sometime through despair that it wasn't performing, so let's try something different. But it was this evolving, and because we had so many different channels at play, we could actually evolve and move people through those channels to see what worked for them. So that was one thing. And I think lots of people will probably sit at the planning stage and say, well, multi-channel is way more expensive and blah, blah, blah. And it's actually not. Like when we looked at the ROI at the end of that acquisition, it actually came out way better than what a normal DM acquisition program. So yeah, I'm fully supportive of, like, all of our acquisition for next year is going to be multi-channel, and we're building it all out to be that way moving forward. So that's one thing. In terms of the creative, what we are really trying to do at the moment is put the impact first. So I mean, fundraising's not rocket science. There's a lot of proven formulas in fundraising, but we want to make sure that people because we have such a low brand recognition, we really need to lead with, this is the impact that you can have partnering with the baker, and this is what we do, whether that be around our research for heart disease or our research for diabetes, or the clinics that we actually have as well, which not many people actually know that we have both heart disease and diabetes clinics available. So we really go with impact first, and we show that through a case study that identifies that problem, and then we position the research as the solution, but across all of it, the donor's always the hero, and the donor being the person that actually makes it all happen. The previous 3 years, particularly in acquisition, we sort of went away from that and made the researcher and the research the hero, which I felt I don't think that's the best way to go about it. It's you're sort of alienating the donor who wants to be part of it. And then the other thing that we made a really strong decision was we got rid of premiums. So historically, we'd always given away a tea towel, some sort of tangible premium that goes in the pack.
Mm.
And we went away from that, which obviously reduced the direct mail pack cost and everything of that nature, but didn't reduce the response rate or anything of that regard. I'm probably going to get shot down by the people who watch this video, but I'm a massive believer that if you provide someone a premium, you need to keep giving them premiums to get them to keep giving. So, and I've seen that time and time again across many organizations. And there's also the premium has to actually relate to what the appeal or what the campaign is about. It can't just be a premium for the sake of being a premium.
Mm. Yeah. It's definitely can be a polarizing topic. The pros and cons of premiums.
You watch all the direct mail truthers come after me now.
Yeah. So Mike, actually related to that, another piece in the well where creative and data really interlink is with AI now, that we can really leverage that to identify certain audiences and messages and quite a lot more. So in fact, Mike's, just as a bit of a plug, has just released a white paper on AI for fundraising. So a really amazing piece that we'll be putting out to our audiences shortly. But Mike, where do you sort of see how AI can really be another support mechanism for both positioning and the overall acquisition campaign?
Yeah, it's a good question. This is where if you can use AI obviously to analyze the message, right? To that's going out, to sort of say, do I have the right tones? What sort of tone is it? It's almost like that independent set of eyes, because sometimes charities and organizations, as Brendan was sort of alluding to, that you've obviously changed your strategy because they were making the researcher the hero rather than the donor the hero and all that sort of stuff. Sometimes charities fall into the trap of being so focused on their cause and what they're trying to do, that they forget the audience that they're engaging with and how to resonate with them. And so AI can be quite helpful in trying to identify those pitfalls in terms of the messaging, and just sort of saying, okay, well, because sometimes, like what I do is you can't actually see it, but I collect all the correspondence that the charities send me, because I obviously donate to a number of charities myself personally, but I also get hit with direct mail quite extensively, and I like to look at what sort of messaging the charities are putting out there, and some they throw too much information, or they make it too complex to digest. And this is where AI can be quite helpful by getting AI and using more than one engine to actually analyze the message and make any sort of recommendations around it. Obviously, you've got to give it the right prompt to understand where you're coming from, but that's one area, right? And then also, in terms of the audience that you're expecting the message to resonate with, does it resonate with that audience, right? AI can also be quite helpful in that aspect of the analysis, and it's these are just simple ways to potentially to use that. Obviously, it's got a lot more power and capability across a range of functions across a business, but those are one of the two areas I'd be sort of recommending charities take up, because you're not really putting any PII data up into the platform. You're just trying to use the language model to its extent in terms of the capability of it interpreting human language and doing a really good job. Because there's a lot of cases outside of obviously the not-for-profit industry where they've done tests where they're saying that AI is more personable as a doctor than a real doctor and all that sort of stuff. So what does that boil down to? It boils down to, you know, the type of interaction and the language that people would like to receive, and that's where it's one of its main strengths are.
I think one thing with the AI thing, it's an extension really of the. I think all not-for-profits have gone through a process or a phase of like building out their donor personas and then giving them names and all of that type of thing. Well, you could actually on AI, you can build out agents as each donor persona, and then you give it the build in all the things that you have been personally impacted by heart disease, blah 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 blah. This age demographic, I have older kids, and build all that into the agent, and then have that agent read your direct mail pack and go what resonates, what doesn't resonate, that type of thing. And you can actually give it a test run before you even approve / print it, send it out. So
yeah, definitely. And that would be exactly. That's a very good example, and that's where a little bit of AI training around how organisations need to build those agents and so on. You know, obviously when we speak to a number of not-for-profits, I would say a majority are sort of, you know, still taking small steps in this particular space. But yeah, it's a very good example. Also, knowing which AI agents are better at handling those sort of things, like Claude, and is probably a little bit better on the language side. ChatGPT is a good all-rounder, but there's others out there that can, you know, sort of help with, you know, interpreting and breaking down those messages. But yeah.
Yeah, no, I think we could go endless into the AI world, and I'm sure it's going to be a big part of next year and the years ahead. So definitely.
Oh, maybe there's another episode where we each bring our AI clone with us.
Yeah. In fact, or has it already happened? Is the question. So we'll start to wrap up shortly. So probably two more questions to sort of round off this acquisition discussion. And so we're going to tap into metrics, and then we actually are going to round up with how do you land the acquisition investment with the board. I know that we're at the start of the conversation, Braden's favorite topic. But so with metrics, Braden, I know you're pretty quite over the years very succinct and straightforward on metrics. What would your comment around key metrics when it comes to acquisition and making decisions?
Yeah, they're different for different channels. But you've really it's got to be multi-year, and everything has to lead to LTV, like long-term value. You can't look at all the others are incremental metrics, but you've got to have the visibility and the understanding of the long-term value of the donor that you're acquiring and what they're going to give you over the lifetime of how long they stick with you. If you don't have that, then you really can't have a proper understanding of the investment that you're making in acquisition, how that is actually going to play out from a revenue perspective. And therefore you can't, as you said, we can't talk to the board and say, we need to increase this because it's working or it's not working. So the ones along the way, indirect mail, pack cost is really important. There's a lot of different levers that you've got that you can influence pack cost. Then you've got response rate, average gift, etc. Cost per acquisition or cost per gift or cost per donor, whichever way you want to look at it. They're all super important across all the different metrics. And then you really need to look at, and this is across all of them, the second gift rate. So not only the percentage of second gift, but the time it takes for a person to give their second gift. whether that's within the first like the same 12 months, or whether that's 18 months from now. It's really those type of metrics. People usually look at probably the same 3 or 4, which is cost per acquisition, average gift, those type of things. But you really, for acquisition to be super successful and you to be on top of it, like you need to drag it out over multi-year with lifetime value or long-term value being the key one that you're driving towards. And then if you want to get really creative and really amazing about it and put all the sexy stuff in there, then you can start looking at how does it influence gift and will, and how many of them go over to become mid-level donors, and how many of them upgrade to regular giving, and you can map that out as well, because that also influences the ROI on your acquisition investment.
Yep.
Just a quick question. Do you also take into consideration retention as well?
Yep.
Yeah, which I guess second gift rate is almost a proxy to retention. Yeah. No, I can completely agree, and probably one level further up on that, and maybe it's quick to round up your quick experience share of how, like, any key insight from positioning this back into your board to get approval. I know, I think you're sort of going through that process right now, but what if there was anything to stand out? Because I know I've heard from others talk about actually also, is it fundamentally serving your purpose? Is this campaign getting to you to achieve your purpose, which is probably a less monetary type metric?
So across all the boards that I've worked with across many different organizations, I think the one thing that you need to do is, it's basically a fundraising campaign in itself, in that you have to, what's the problem that you're trying to solve? And then what is the task or the thing that you need to do to solve that problem? And then what are the resources you need to do that? And then what's the outcome? And for us, it was showing the board very clearly, like a 5-year graph of the amount of donors, or the amount of active donors that we had, just dropping and dropping and dropping, and then lining that up with the investment in acquisition across the same time, and then saying, if we continue that, this is where we're going to end up, and it's not pretty, so we need to change that. Bringing in some of we need to do it now, because of 2 years from now, it's going to be a hell of a lot harder to be in the acquisition space, so we need to start now. And then talking them through we need to sort of have a go at everything, because we don't know what's going to work, and then do test and learns on a whole bunch of things, with the ability to turn things off and turn things on really quickly. But you need to be able to get that across really clearly, to get the board to say, yes, we'll invest. We know what the problem that you're trying to solve. We know the long-term outcomes that it's going to bring, but it's okay for a couple of these things to fail along the way, and we know that that's going to be the case.
No, and I'd probably reiterate, if to wrap up today's podcast, is like a quick takeaway from my mind. It'd be great to hear if you guys have had a quick takeaway, like for your own personal benefits. But for me, it's probably related to that, is that we are in this immensely changing world, and we have, like Mike's already shared, like the challenges with technology disrupting actually the ability to even talk to people. And so for me, it's this ability to be, that sort of agile, faster paced, test and improve, and just be willing to take on these challenges, which I will say, working with you, Braden, over the years, that's one of your strengths. I would say you've taken that willingness to give these things a go. So Michael, Braden, what would your parting word or thought be for today?
My parting word would be, it's a good question. I would just say that obviously there's as we move into 2026, there will be challenges, but nothing's insurmountable, and it's just a matter of actually just working through it. I mean, obviously it's encouraging what Braden's sort of been talking about in terms of what he's been trying to achieve, and I think all charities need to have that sort of mindset, to be truthful.
Yeah. Braden, any words of wisdom to share with our audience?
Words of wisdom. As you know, Joel, I'm a massive sports fan, and I was watching a documentary on a sports person the other day, and they said you have to love the grind. And I think fundraising, for the most part, as you said, there's no silver bullet. There's no massively exciting thing on the horizon that's going to change the game of fundraising as we know it. AI might be that thing, but it's not there yet. But it's just incremental improvement, test and learn, improve, test and learn, improve. And you do that consistently day after day after day after day. And you'd be disciplined about doing that. And that's where you build a really successful, really sustainable fundraising program. And that methodology applies to every aspect of your fundraising program, whether that be your RG acquisition, your RG retention, but also in acquisition because of the cost involved and the necessity to bring on quality donors so that you've got a better chance of retaining them. That test and learn and do all the little things really, really well day after day is super, super important.
Yeah, nice. I think that's probably a good way to end today's discussion. So thank you, Braden, for joining us today, and thanks, Michael, for once again just being the backbone of all things data. Look forward to seeing you all in our next series. It may, as Braden said, may be an AI version, and actually none of us are actually here, but we'll see where we go. But thank you. Cheers.
Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, thank you.